Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today's video is a different one. Today we're doing unexplainable creepy stories. Stories that don't really add up or make sense, but are allegedly true. If you have your own story that you'd like to share with me, be sure to submit it to my website at southerncannibal.com. All that being said, let's begin on these creepy stories. And remember to always stay hungry. I didn't see it, but I heard it. My friends and I got a cheap set of walkie-talkies from Walmart, and we were playing around with them in the middle of the day. There's a bit of silence as we're trying to figure out the volume, and out of nowhere there's a male voice saying, "Mayday, mayday, mayday." That comes through all of our walkie-talkies, and it definitely sounds like it's from one of those aircraft headsets. We try to answer back, but there's no response. I called non-emergency, but they said there weren't any reports of distressed aircraft or ships, and even if there were, they couldn't really do anything about it. Alternatively, a couple of months later, I actually saw a plane with an engine on fire go over my campus, but apparently no one else did. This is still super creepy to me, and I don't know what to think of it. My brother insists that when we were kids, our mom took us to Lax to see a 747 that had crashed onto the tarmac and broken apart, even though I have absolutely no recollection of this. He said it was burned out, broken into several pieces, and the yellow emergency slides were deployed. It was still smoking and there was a trail of debris and charred runway behind it. Apparently it was just me, my brother, and my mom, despite the fact that we have another brother and two sisters who were still living at home at the time. He says that he just remembers watching the plane and all the emergency workers from a chain link fence. This makes zero sense because, first of all, why the heck would our mom take us to see a tragic plane crash? She wasn't that type of person. Second of all, Lax is about an hour drive, which makes it less plausible. And third and fourth of all, my mom denies that it ever happened, and I've also searched and there were no plane crashes in the area at the time. The weird thing is, my brother has a freaky memory. He's always remembered random odd events, even from when he was insanely young, mentioning things with scarily accurate detail that most people that young wouldn't even remember. It was around the time that our family took a plane from Lax to Mexico to visit my dad's family, so I just chalk it up to him internalizing some fear from the flight, even though I remember us both being okay from flying. It was, up until this year, the only time I'd ever flown in a plane. But the other thing is that for as long as I can remember, I've had intense nightmares of planes crashing. I'm either on the plane or I'm watching it crash near me. I've since developed an intense fear of flying. Not just of flying, but planes in the air. There's something viscerally unnerving to me seeing these big metal monstrosities flying through the air. It's almost, I don't know how to describe it, but morbidly and deeply disturbing. Anyway, every time I have one of these plane crash nightmares, I think or say something like, "Oh my god, it's finally happened after all these years of dreaming about it." Simply because of how absolutely real and convincing these dreams are. Sometimes I just suspect that I'm dreaming, but something will happen that makes me absolutely convinced that this time it's actually happening and I'm not dreaming. The messed up thing is, if I ever do see a plane crash or survive a plane crash, I will immediately suspect that I'm either trapped in a dream or have died, and I really don't know if anyone will be able to convince me otherwise. I have some seriously messed up issues with sleep and nightmares though. I should probably see someone about it because it's definitely impacted my health. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, I would have a recurring nightmare that one of my dolls came to life, played with me, and then would try to pull me into my closet with her. I'd follow her into the closet at first, and then she'd show me this little door at the back of the closet, and my heart would start to race. I don't know what it was about that door, but I knew something bad would happen if I ever went through it. I'd start to struggle and try to pull away, but the doll was too strong and would start pulling me through the door. At this point in the dream, I'd always wake up screaming. The worst part was I had night terrors, so sometimes I'd wake up standing next to my closet. Every night before bed, I'd make my parents make sure there wasn't a little door at the back of my closet. There never was. Anyway, I was talking to my mom the other day and this dream came up. I'm laughing about it and how ridiculously paranoid I was about dolls in that closet, but my mom gets really quiet. She tells me the creepy part of that dream wasn't the doll. It was the fact that there actually used to be a little door at the back of the closet, but when I was around 1 year old, they remodeled the house and put a wall where the door used to be. There's absolutely no way I could have remembered that door, but years later, I continued dreaming about it. None of my friends or new people I meet ever believe in this story, but I swear it's true. Growing up, I had a friend named Adam. He was never able to come out during the day, only right before all of us kids had to go home for the evening. Adam lived a few houses over in a house with an overgrown yard. I only met his parents once. They were very strange, didn't smile, and obviously didn't want me there. I remember Adam telling me that he was sick, that's why he couldn't play that much. He was a very small boy, pale with dark hair. Eventually Adam stopped showing up altogether, and I eventually moved on, though I do remember going to his house a couple of times to see if he could come play, and his dad just giving me this look before closing the door in my face. Later in life, I asked my sister if she remembered him. She doesn't, and according to my parents, that house was empty the entire time we lived there. I don't know who Adam was. I don't know why I so vividly remember him and his parents. As far as I can tell, he wasn't real, and yet I have perfect memories of him and his parents. I really don't know. Was it just my imagination, or was I seeing spirits? I guess I'll never really know. My neighbor was dying of a heart condition about 6 years ago. He knew he was, so he was giving away his valuables to the people he trusted. He gave me his tackle box. He absolutely loved to fish. I would see him come home from fishing every day and he'd just sit on his porch and skin fish. I just put the tackle box in my closet and I really didn't do anything with it since I don't fish. Anyways, soon after he passed away in his home. Exactly a week after that, I woke up to the tackle box at the foot of my bed. Weird, but my stepdad likes to mess around, so I figured it was him just playing a joke, so I put it back. The very next morning I wake up, it's at the foot of my bed again. So I asked my stepdad if it was him and what the deal was. Well, he had no idea what I was talking about. To test this, I decided to put the tackle box in a spot that I knew he wouldn't find, nor would he attempt to get it. I put it under my bed all the way in the back against the wall, and I put stuff in front of it to conceal it. Next morning, nothing. Okay, I guess it was him. Didn't give it much thought after that. 3 days pass, I wake up one morning, and there it is, at the foot of my bed yet again. Crap. Now I'm starting to freak out. So I decided to do what any rational person would, and I went fishing with it. After I went fishing, I put the tackle box away, and it hasn't moved since then. It's still there. Just after high school, maybe 6 months or so after 9/11, I was a van driver who drove the meals for Meals on Wheels to the place where they get packaged up and taken for home delivery. Anyway, the delivery van had only had AM/FM radio, and I was listening to 92.5 FM, when all of a sudden the station cuts out and a transmission that I can only describe as an American version of number station began playing. It was seemingly random numbers followed by a long period of the same phrase being repeated over and over again. The phrase was, "They took the crosstown bus," over and over again. None of the other drivers heard it, but man, it was creepy to hear. Eventually, the regular radio station came back on, and they never mentioned anything about it. So guys, I found out while digging more into this story that this happened in October of 2005. Dates of the 9th, 11th, and 16th are repeated in various places across the internet. It was actually heard on many stations in the Northeast United States. Broadcasters say that it was just a malfunction of the Amber Alert system, but it was several times over in a 2-week span in different markets. Regardless of what actually happened here, it's still pretty creepy nonetheless. About 8 years ago, I was taking a drive out to Kansas from the East Coast. I was with a friend and we were going out to see her grandparents. Once we were about 2 hours from the grandparents' house, my friend starts outlining standard operating procedures of seeing things in and around her family's home. She seemed a bit panicky when going over everything, but I managed to calm her down. I'm pretty skeptical of everything, and I just assured her that the things she had seen when she was a small child were just manufactured in her imagination. She then insisted that the entire family had seen these things, with the exception of her grandparents. 2 hours later, we arrive in Kansas, and I'm ready to fall over because of the length of time the last leg of the trip took. We're then welcomed, and the grandmother then takes me to a back bedroom, and just as she's about to close the door, she then stops and then says, "Maybe you shouldn't stay in this room," and escorts me to another room. Okay, that was a little strange, but whatever, I'm really tired. Fast forward to night 2 at the grandparents' home. It's around 11 p.m. and my friend is crashed out on the couch watching TV. I'm in an adjacent bedroom from which I can see her laying on the couch. I nod off for the night, but I wake up to an old gray man that bared a resemblance to the grandfather, but it wasn't the grandfather. He was standing with his back to me in the doorway looking at my friend sleeping on the couch. I decided I was going to get up and confront the old gray man, and something slammed me back into the bed. I tried to get up several more times with the same result. Each time I was slammed back into the bed, I would hear a voice that would repeat, "Put a seal on the door." Finally, I snapped to, and it's 3 a.m., and everything was normal again. I must have been sleeping. It was probably just a weird dream. No old gray man, and my friend was fast asleep. So I start pacing around the room trying to decide how I feel about what had just happened. I glance over to my friend, her eyes are open, and then she says, "You saw it, didn't you?" I then say, "Get in the car. I can't be here right now." We spend the next 4 hours sitting in a Walmart parking lot just talking about the history of our experiences in that house and comparing to my own. Okay, my nerves are not on fire anymore and we're heading back to the grandparents' home now. We arrive and they're waiting for us inside. I tell them exactly what happened to me and I get, "Yeah, that's strange. We usually do seal our doors with a prayer at night, but with all the excitement we must have just forgotten. All of the children have mentioned stories of things, but we've never seen them. We're really sorry you had to go through that." I'm not really sure what I seen or experienced that night, but whenever I tell people, they always get that look of skepticism. It's pretty obvious they don't believe me. My conclusion is that the experience was indistinguishable from reality in the moment. I don't really know what that means, but it definitely changed the way that I look at things moving forward. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't believe in these things, and until it happens to you, you'll never really know what it feels like. It was a warm summer morning back when I was a kid. I was standing in our hallway putting on my shoes when I randomly peeked into our living room and I saw a see-through male figure surrounded by rainbow-colored lights standing right in the middle of the living room. He was reading a book and he didn't seem to notice me. I thought it was weird, but I didn't really feel scared or anything. It felt like the room was filled with a warm and loving energy, if that makes sense. I kinda just shrugged it off and went about my day. Probably because I was too young to really understand what I'd seen. A few days later, when my mom tucked me into bed, she read me a bedtime story about a kid who meets an angel or something like that. I don't remember the story exactly, but what was interesting is that the author's description of what the angel looked like is exactly what I saw. It was exactly the same thing as the strange rainbow man that I had seen in our living room a couple of days before. It even said that angels will often visit humans surrounded by a strong rainbow-colored lightning and manifest themselves while reading the book. I casually blurted out, "Oh, well, I think I've seen an angel then." And my mom was like, "You have? That's great." We didn't really talk more about that for a while, until one day where I randomly asked my mom if I could see a picture of my granddad. He had died unexpectedly while my mom was pregnant with me. She found an old family album and we looked through pictures of my parents' wedding that happened exactly 1 year before I was born. There was a picture of 3 or 4 people sitting together laughing and having a great time at the party. I immediately pointed out the guy who sat in the middle and then said, "How funny, he looks just like the angel I saw." My mom's face turned white as a ghost. She was just about to tell me that this was indeed my deceased grandfather that I never got to meet. To this day, I'm very convinced that it was him visiting me. This was 4 years ago. As I was walking on the sidewalk on a busy afternoon, I saw a very suspicious boy/man about 18 years old. He was about 10 meters away from me and walking what it looked like towards me. I kept my eyes on him despite the fact that he wasn't looking directly at me. His eyes were just kind of roaming, jumping from object to object. As we approached one another, half a meter away from each other, he takes out a knife and tries to stab me in my left side. He wasn't really fast, so I easily dodged it, and I immediately turned to see who is he or if he's trying to stab me again. To my surprise, he continues walking, and after a couple of meters, he stops, turns around, smiles, and gives me a thumbs up. Then he continues walking in the opposite direction. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he wanted. When I told my family about this encounter, they didn't believe me, nor do they think that I could actually stop someone from stabbing me. I don't know how to explain it, but this really did happen. It's really unfortunate when your own family won't believe you. I just really wish I knew what the guy was up to or what he wanted. I really hope that he didn't hurt anyone else while on his walk, but I guess that's something I'll never know. I woke up to something that kind of sounded like a door shutting. At first, I thought it was a dream because I could hear it in the dream as I was waking up. Kinda like when someone calls your name when you're dreaming. But then I looked at my cat. His hair was completely standing up and he was beaming at my bedroom door. This was the moment when I got really scared because I know animals can pick up on that stuff, and I thought that he might know something's wrong. My cat doesn't ever do this kind of thing unless there's a dog in the room. So I looked over at the door, and the only way I can describe it is it looked like it was swaying slowly, like it was breathing, like someone was standing on the other side of it trying to hear if I was awake. This swaying was also accompanied by a shadow. Now, I don't mean a supernatural shadow. I mean like there was someone on the other side of the door. I was absolutely paralyzed in fear. I lied there for 5 minutes completely naked watching this door away. I considered yelling and trying to scare them away, but I was terrified someone might respond. I legitimately thought that this was the moment where I might have to defend myself or be killed. I don't own a gun, but after about 10 minutes or so, I mustered up the courage to check every room in the house. I checked every corner as well, but there was no one there. I don't know what happened, but my evolutionary traits kicked in and I completely believed someone was outside my door. I don't know what it was, but something was definitely there. I just know it. I was fishing on Lake Minnewanka in Banff National Park with a good friend. It was about 50 feet from shore. The time was around 8:30 p.m. I see glowing red eyes up in the trees, like red, like Predator, I guess. I do a double take. They're gone. I decide to not say anything. Maybe I'm tripping. I did just smoke up. Nope. About 5 minutes later, my buddy then says, "I just seen some glowing red eyes up the top of those trees." I feel goosebumps. Yep, I saw them too. We look back and now they're gone. We decide to aim the boat towards the shoreline. It's not dark yet, but sun is going down. We saw nothing. No owls, no goats in the trails, nothing. We didn't get off the boat, but we had a good look around. Now, this happened about 10 years ago, but whenever I ask my friend about it, he always says that he doesn't want to talk about it. I can't blame him, but after all these years, I've never heard or seen anything like those glowing red eyes, 30 to 40 feet up in the trees staring right at us. I copied and pasted this next part. I didn't know anything about the history when we went fishing there. Here's what I found. For more than 100 centuries, people hunted and camped along the original shores of Lake Minnewanka. The Stony people called it Minnewaukee, or Lake of the Spirits. They respected and feared this lake for its resident spirits. The early Europeans called it Devil's Lake. I used to go camping there, but I never do anymore. Mostly because it's bear country for most of the summer, but yeah, also because of those bright red eyes. I will never forget it. It was the most surreal thing I've ever seen. I used to have a buddy that lived in the same neighborhood, a few streets over. One night we were having a couple of beers in his backyard while playing cards. I had some things to do the next morning, so just before 10, I said my goodbyes and I shoved off. It was a short walk, maybe 15 minutes door to door, so I never drove. Anyway, it was a really nice night, uneventful trip. But when I got home, my roommate was coming out the front door, coffee in hand and dressed for work. He gave me a kind of funny look, and he said he thought I was asleep since my truck was still in the driveway. I told him where I'd been, and I asked him why I was going in for work at night. That's when he kind of just laughed at me and he asked if I was drunk. We kind of just stared at each other for a minute, and then he told me it was just after 5 in the morning, and he was going in just like he usually did. In my entire life, I had never felt more confused than I did in that moment. I could tell he was dead serious, but I knew that I had just left my friend's house. I checked my phone and, sure enough, 5-something in the morning. My roommate left for work. I began pacing circles in the living room for a bit and then called the friend whose house I'd just left. He groggily answered and then he confirmed that I'd left at 10 the previous evening. I have no idea what happened during those 7 hours of my life, and it gives me chills to think about it all these years later. I wasn't drunk, I wasn't drugged, I wasn't tired. No one could have slipped anything in either of the 2 Coors Lights I'd had. I have no known medical conditions that could have caused me to black out, and nothing has happened like this since. I just don't know what happened at that time. Once again, guys, another Redditor chimed in something that I found kind of interesting. They mentioned that it might have been a form of seizure. Some people who experience seizures have described periods of time in which nothing is recording in the brain, and they have no memory of what has transpired. To outside observers, however, they can be seen performing basic activities such as walking around or even driving. I've actually heard of this theory before being proposed as an explanation for supposed alien abductions. Whatever the actual case is here for the loss of time, it's incredibly creepy. I was walking to class from the dining hall on my campus when I saw a lady yelling for help and banging on a window of a nearby building. Lots of people were walking past, but I was the only one who seemed to acknowledge it. I went to the window to help, and she told me she was locked in a room in the building and that she needed me to come in and open the door for her. Now, I have no idea the layout of this building and where she was located, so I decided to call campus security for help despite her pleading with me not to call them and to just let her out. I call them, and when I hear them coming, I go to greet them so I can take them to the window. I leave for maybe a maximum of 15 seconds, and when I return with campus security, she's gone. We can't see her at the window, and campus security goes inside to double check, and sure enough, there's no trace of her. Campus security definitely thought I was crazy, and I'm pretty sure my professor thought I was full of crap when I explained to him why I was late. No one seems to believe me that this happened, but I swear to you that it did. I just don't know what to think. Who was that woman? Why was she locked in that room? And more importantly, where did she go? I guess it's something I'll never know, but I'm always gonna wonder about. I work night shift at a hospital, and during the night it's fairly common for us to run out of particular supplies that we need. During the day, there is normally a worker from Central Supply that you can call and they'll bring up what you need directly to your floor. But at night, we don't have that luxury, so we often have to go down and get it ourselves. Central Supply is the basement of this hospital that has been around since the 40s, so it's creepy enough. I've always heard stories about how creepy it was and people getting uneasy feelings while down there alone. I was pretty naive and I didn't really believe it until one night that I had to go down there by myself. The place is huge and dimly lit with rows of shelves of hospital supplies everywhere. I'm in the middle of these shelves looking for what I need when I start to feel a shiver run through my entire body. The hair on my neck is standing up and I just get this feeling of complete dread, like I'm not supposed to be there. Then all of a sudden I see this black figure dart past me out of the corner of my eye. At first I thought I was just seeing things because it's like 3 a.m. and I'm tired, so I brush it off. I go to leave and I suddenly hear a huge crash behind me. A variety of the supplies were wiped completely off the shelf and all over the floor, and in the corner of the room, I just see this black figure-like thing standing there. Every hair on my body is standing up at this point, and I get the heck out of there as fast as possible. I came back to my floor and all but one of my coworkers thought I was bluffing. The only one who believed me saw my face, and without me even saying anything, they said to me, "You saw it too, didn't you?" So yeah, I never went down in that basement ever again. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Once again, if you'd like to submit your own story to me, be sure to submit it through my website, which is www.southerncannibal.com. Just click the big red button that says submit a story, fill out the form, and then send it. Also, before we bring this video to a close, I want to give a huge shout out to all of my $5 or more patrons, as well as my $3 patrons featured on screen. Shout out to Babe Lincoln, Beryl S, Beth A, Kate E, Katrina T, Celeste S, Ellie S, Emily W, Howard R, Jonathan C, Joseph F, Lori J, Matthew B, Michael G, Steph L, Tammy S, Terry H, Too Etchy For You, and Victor R. Thank all of you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it more than you know. And if any of you would like to join these awesome people and also become a patron, head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/southerncannibal. Thank you everyone, and have a good one. And remember to always